I'd like to call to order the meeting of the King George County School Board, and we'll begin with an invocation with Pastor Sherman Davis.
Thank you for the privilege of doing this. Our Heavenly Father, we are thankful for the wonderful opportunity we have to bow our hearts and heads in a word of prayer. And Lord, awesome responsibility that's on the board and the teachers of our county. And so we do lift up our superintendent, Dr. Jesse Boyd. We ask you, Father, that you'd work and lead in his life as he, Lord, represents the school board and the teachers and, Lord, the students of this county. We pray for David Bush, the Shiloh District, and Ed Franks at large. Pray for Matt Rolls, James Monroe District, Lord, and Colleen Davis from Dahlgren, and we pray for Kathy Hoover from James Madison. And Lord, again, the awesome responsibility. We pray, Lord, for students. Lord, there's some students that's more difficult than others. Some have medical issues. Some have discipline issues. And Lord, some want to learn and some are not concerned about learning. But we pray for students. Dear Lord, that you would work in their hearts. The Bible says if we have trained up a child the way he should go, they will not depart from it. Implying that there's ways we can train children that's not good. So we pray for the good. We pray for teachers again. That they would be inspired, Lord, to do the good for students. We pray for parents and teachers. They work together. And Lord, understand the responsibility of raising our children, teaching them right, instructing them right. And Father, we praise you. We thank you. We love you for all that you do and all that you work in our hearts and lives. We thank you, Lord Jesus, for all of that. In that name we do pray. Amen and amen.
Stand for the pledge.
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Boy, do we have public comments? Already know who it is. All right, first is Sherman Davis. If you'd like to come to the podium and comment.
Surprise, surprise. I'm here to read you a verse of scripture from God's word. I tell folks all the time that this is the Bible, which means basic information before leaving earth. And so I want to read you a portion of scripture. And what a wonderful way to get started, prayer and Bible reading. But the scripture says in the book of Isaiah, chapter 45, for thus saith the Lord that created the heavens, and God himself that formed the earth and made it. He hath established it. He created it not in vain. He formed it to be inherited, or inhabited, excuse me. I am the Lord, and there is none else. I have spoken, or I have not spoken in secret, in a dark place of the earth. I said not unto the seed of Jacob, seek ye me in vain. I, the Lord, speak righteousness. I declare things that are righteous. And of course, in verse 22 of the same chapter, which says, look unto me, and be ye saved, all the ends of the earth, for I am God, and there is none else. I have sworn by myself, the word is gone out of my mouth in righteousness, and I shall not return, or it shall not return, that unto me every knee shall bow, every tongue shall confess that I am Lord. And so we are rejoiced in the fact of what God says, that the source of salvation, he says, is the Lord. Unto me, look unto me. And the simplicity of salvation is just to look. It's a simple belief. I came to the Lord 53 years ago as a warlock, and all I did was look to the Lord and asked Him to save me, and that's what He did. He promises in His Word. And the security is be saved. We can be saved for have eternal life. And the scope of salvation is all the ends of the earth. Anybody who wants to trust the Lord can do so. And that's why it's important to give folks the Bible so they'll know how to and what they need to do. So we appreciate the opportunity to be here this evening to have prayer. We're thankful for the opportunity to read the scriptures. We pray that something was said to be a blessing to you, encourage you in your hard work and low pay. They all said, amen. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry I neglected to mention that in public comment, we'd like you to limit it to 3 minutes. And please state your name and then your connection to the division. The next person that we have up is Brian Metz.
Good evening, Brian Metz. I'm in the Monroe District, and I'm the parent of a current high schooler in our King George schools. So I was coming today. I was really hoping we would be after the agenda item for the process and procedures that were going to be implemented due to the cell phone policy, because it's all about implementation, right? There is a recommended strike through tonight comment I saw in the agenda, which I think is excellent. The removal of the word possession. The policy was very oddly written in that you could not possess the phone, but you could use it before or after school. So I do appreciate you going back and at least revisiting what you came out of the workshop with. That said, I would strongly suggest that this board solicit an education policy legal counsel. Over the last couple of months where I've been coming to this board to observe how things are operated, things like when this policy comes out, and it's a very clearly confusing set of sentences that came together through probably a lot of input. Sometimes a second set of eyes at that really will clean things up. It'll make it easier for the schools to implement. What I was worried about is, hey, I'm going to have to go out and buy a TI-85 graphing calculator because now my child can't use the app on his phone. Right? Now, I'm sure the school, those teachers that are doing advanced math will take this policy into account and implement it in a way that will be agreeable to all of us. And I'm sure that the use of the Chromebooks will be considered in that. But just understand, you are limiting one of the newest communication methods we have at our use. Your own school uses cell phones for a lot of communications, particularly in the after-school activities. And that needs to be taken into account. Hey, at noon, we're telling you where to be at 2 o'clock because the bus is picking you up early, right? Those kinds of things happen throughout the day. And I don't believe you're adding any administrative staff. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing, I'm glad that Pastor Davis did his public speaking bit here. I would implore you to, again, consult with legal counsel on this, because the invocation is a directed, singular Christian invocation every night that I've ever been here. There's 6,000 religions. And we want to be as open and encompassing to all of those students in the school. Not all of them are Christian or Catholic or you name it, right? There's a lot of different personalities. And when every night we have the same invocation, which is forced, not public comment, the invocation is something you set in the agenda. That sets a tone and it is actually off-putting to some of our students, and we do not want that in our school system. So thank you.
Evan Garner.
Chair, if I could just introduce Mr. Garner real quick. Come on up, Mr. Garner. Mr. Garner sent me an email just a few days ago, or I guess it was maybe a week or so ago, and it was so uplifting that we had talked and I invited him to public comment tonight. Mr. Garner is our communication specialist and job coach at the high school, so I don't want to steal any of his thunder, but this is worth presentation. Just wanted to introduce Mr. Garner before we went forward. So go ahead, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Chairman Bush, board members, and Dr. Boyd. As the job coach, communication specialist at King George High School, I have the privilege of working with postgraduate special needs students who have graduated with an applied studies diploma. Our program is not just about teaching job experience, it's about building bridges within our community. By partnering with local businesses such as Walmart and Goodwill, we are not only helping our students gain valuable work experience, but also contributing to the growth and inclusivity of our community. This program aims to help our students with disabilities achieve independence and acquire work skills and self-confidence that will allow them to seek employment. It has also increased positive job habits for students, such as working efficiently, following directions, proper job grooming, and hygiene, showing respect to customers, and completing a task accurately. Participation in this program has been life-changing for some students. My goal has been to assist students in securing jobs that they are capable, able, willing to perform. Since January, 6 postgraduates have been awarded jobs at Dahlgren Naval Welfare Center on base as janitors. These individuals are earning a competitive wage of $17.60 per hour. If they choose to work full-time, they receive fringe benefits, including health insurance. And I must say, one of the students did exit school to work full-time. He's satisfied with the job. One postgraduate in the summer program recently achieved his dream job working at Walmart as an overnight stocker, earning over $15 per hour. This financial independence is a testament to the success of our program. The opportunities our program offers, from mock interviews to volunteer field experiences, have equipped our students with invaluable skills and bolstered their confidence. This wouldn't have been possible without your unwavering support and belief in our program. Your support has not only demonstrated to our students and their parents or guardians their capability to thrive independently in the real world, but also left a lasting impact on the lives of our postgraduates as they transition into adulthood. We are truly grateful for your continued support.
All right, next, do we have any changes to the agenda? Rolls.
Yes, I was just going to note that I have extensive feedback for the policy that's now been renamed GAD-R, or I guess it's a regulation. So I'd ask that we move that from an action item to a discussion item, because I'm definitely not going to be ready to vote for that tonight myself. And maybe this isn't a change, but I would just say for the norms protocols, I do want to have just some discussion there, but I expect we probably will vote on it. So I think that can.
Which one?
The norms and protocols.
Okay.
So I probably, I mean, I guess to your discretion, it could say as an action item, but definitely need to have some discussion there as well.
I thought we had a discussion about that last time.
Yeah, I have some more things, but it's probably minor enough that we will still vote on it. So I guess it's fine to make an action item.
So you just want to have maybe a little more discussion?
Right.
Maybe or maybe not a vote on it. Okay.
Right.
That's fine. Any addition to that and the rest of the board?
What was the first one again?
The very first item in the action list, action items for the policy GAD-R, employee social media use, move that to discussion item.
All right, any other changes? Okay, then we have a presentation for the secondary cell phone practices and procedures. Dr. Boyd?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. This evening, we have Mr. Mark Watson from King George High School and Mr. TJ Schaefer from King George Middle School. As we are all fully aware of at this point in King George County and really across the Commonwealth, we see a number of petri dishes really of different cell phone policies and practices and procedures. So in keeping us on par with where other school divisions are in the state right now, and really trying to plan successfully for the rollout of this new policy, the implementation of this policy, and the practices and procedures associated with it, we invited the high school principal and middle school assistant principal here this evening to share some of the work that they've begun doing on implementing the cell phone policy. Again, it is a work in progress. There's some things that we're still working through, but they did want to update the school board and also the community. So I believe first up we have Mr. Watson.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for having me here this evening. So I'm going to go through some slides here just kind of to explain where we are with this, and as Dr. Boyd mentioned, certainly it's a work in progress. This is a very, very new thing, and as we all know, certainly will be very, very impactful. So it's something that will take us time. As you can imagine, at times in the summertime, it's hard to get everybody together to kind of work through this with an admin team that is not just 2 or 3 people. And we want to make sure that our admin team and our teachers have some input as well. So it is a work in progress, but certainly we feel good about some things. And at the same time, we have to be able to shift and pivot when the time is called for. So certainly it's nothing right here tonight is necessarily written in stone, but at the same time, I feel like we're making solid progress prior to the students coming back to school. Just to kind of get you up to speed a little bit here in terms of what we've done at the high school. Certainly, we had staff members, teachers, myself, parents, students as well that were involved in the actual committee for King George County Schools that I know Dr. Boyd presented information to you as a board in terms of those findings. We did survey our staff, and as you can see there, our staff was looking for something more than what we had. So certainly I think the policy has been well received from the standpoint of it's something more than what was in place at King George High School. Just to make you guys aware where we were with the policy in terms of how cell phones were used prior to this, not the policy per se, but the practice was teacher autonomy. Run your classroom the way you need to run your classroom, and we'll support you in whatever efforts that you wish. So as you can see there, we have some teacher feedback, 72 responses from our teachers. Was asking for something more, which is a good thing. As you can see as well here, where they want to see this action take place. As you can see, we're almost 100% in the classroom, certainly, as we know that is an impactful distraction to instruction in the classroom, among other places in the building and other things that cell phones can impact during our school day. So where we are currently.
Mr. Watson, can I stop here a second?
Yes, sir.
So for pass, what was that short
So
for?
pass is something we have daily. It's between second and third block, and it's a time where we repeat our blocks. So for example, on a Monday, we have block 1, block 2, then we go to pass. Mondays we go back to block 1. So what that does is it gives our teachers an extra half hour per week with their classes. And if they have first block planning, then on Mondays they have a little bit extra time planning wise as well. So it's more of a time to build community, work on remediation, work on tutoring, things of that nature. Sometimes, it's time for kids to breathe, to be honest. I mean, but the teachers use that the way that they need to with their classes during that time. And we do have that daily. On Wednesdays, we have club day where we have various clubs that meet during those 30 minutes. And we have a lot of clubs at King George High School. So we have kind of a scheduled rotation for clubs on Wednesdays when students would go and attend those events.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. So where we are with this is it's communication and education. Emails to families in the community, emails to students. We are working right now to kind of solidify 2 options, 2 times and dates for students to come in, families, community members to come in and just really sit down at the table and talk through this policy, what it is, what it isn't. I think Mr. Rolls, you mentioned the employee cell phone or the employee social media policy, if you will. I do 0 social media. I never have, I never will, but there's a lot of things that get sent to me regarding social media, and there's a lot of things that get sent to me about this new policy that people don't seem to understand, or they're making assumptions. So I feel like these town hall meetings, if you will help clarify that for at least our community with our high school students and parents. And again, it's more about, like I said, communicating what it is and what it isn't and how we're going to work through it together. But I think those town hall meetings will be very telling. Hopefully we have some people that will make time to come in and express their questions and their thoughts and their opinions, rather than just putting them on Facebook and making assumptions about things. So certainly we're looking forward to that. And then really we get to the second bullet, which is it's truly advertising and marketing. This is business 101 stuff. We are shifting to a new practice. So we have to communicate that. We have to advertise that. We're going to make large posters for the building. We're going to have signs in the classrooms, bathrooms, locker rooms, things of that nature, just so So it almost like becomes wallpaper in a sense. Like you see it everywhere you go. You see it in your classrooms. It builds this model of the consistency of expectations where every teacher has the same sign in their room. Every every high traffic area has this poster. Our theme for the year is all in. So certainly, you know, all in on no cell phones is going to be part of our all in, and we look forward to that. Additionally, we will work to have a back to school video with expectations. We're also trying to set some norms where our teachers are starting their classes daily with a prompt, or not necessarily a prompt, but you know, a statement of cell phones. We're not using cell phone. You know, and we'll work on that statement to be a little more formal, but also it's just basically it's that daily reminder of, hey, there's no cell phones in class. Please make sure you're aware of that. And then again, the announcements, morning announcements, you know, announcements at the end of the day, just to really, again, communicate what our expectations are and what the policy is and how we're enforcing that. Implementation, certainly implementation is phones are not visible and not in use. Teachers will report violations in their classrooms to administration. Administration will be notified via the process that is put in place. So what we're working on right now is to have a process in place where teacher A says to student A, your phone's out, you know, can't be out. I got to make sure that I notify your administrator. And you're going to have to work through them with that. And certainly, so the teachers are going to have to play some part in the enforcement of the policy. I am not a fan and am not in any way interested in asking teachers to be the people that request phones. I have seen that, and that goes bad more often than it goes well. So we are going to be avoiding that phone conversation in the sense of the violation portion will be handled with administration and students. So again, that violation will be communicated to the administrator. I've read and seen a lot of things on the news, I'm sure as you guys have had, where Stafford is kind of yonder bag kind of thing. Fredericksburg City is this. Loudoun County's that. So there's a lot of stuff out there. Certainly, we know it's all newsworthy right now. But what we have, my biggest thing with this is I truly feel like the biggest point of contention that we will have with our students and our parents is that's not your phone to take. That is my property, and it's $1,000 to $1,500. And my other fear with that is inevitably, as we are taking phones to give back to people, there's going to be a mishap. Someone's going to lose a phone, give a phone to the wrong person. I've seen this happen. And now we have an issue where someone's $1,000 phone is gone. So rather than take possession of the phone, we would like to employ that use of those yonder bag or something similar to that, where we say to a student, hey, you violated the policy. You got to come down to my office. Now you got to lock it up, and we'll work through that after the fact near the end of the day. Whether the first time is we'll unlock it for you, or the second time parent needs to come in, still working through some of that stuff, but just not real comfortable with the taking of the phone, the actual taking of possession of the phone. And again, parents are a part of this. Communication, education, like I mentioned earlier, are very important. Parents have to be a part of the process. We want them to be resources for us with this, not a barrier, not a challenge. So we really have to work with our parents to see the why and really make sure that they understand they are part of the process. And if you don't want to be part of the process per se of coming in to unlock a bag or get your phone back, then just tell your students not to bring their phone to school. I mean, that's a simple solution, although not satisfactory for some. But again, eventually we'll have parent-teacher conferences, parents coming in to have some more formal, long-term type discussions about some things that we may need to do. And then again, with repeat offenders, we have a lot of things on the table in terms of what order and what offense. We're just not there yet with how that will work. Certainly we have a lot of things that are listed there. Loss of potential extracurricular activities, phone is banned from school property, ISS, Saturday school community service, and we could go on and on and on. But I think that's kind of where we are with how we will work with our repeat offenders. Certainly we're going to have them. We do know that. But we'll work with them, and it comes back to, the next thing really what it comes down to, where am I clicking? Okay. Is that first bullet at the top, is to rely on strong positive relationships. Like, this is the why. You can like it or not, but this is the why. This is what we're doing, and you got to work with us on that. I will preach patience to everyone, including you guys sitting up there. It's going to be hard work, and it's going to be It's not going to be overnight. It's going to take some time. But if we are consistent and we deliver our expectations in an appropriate manner, I do feel like we'll get there where the kids understand and see value in why we're doing this. And again, that communication of expectations is very important. As I mentioned earlier, understanding the policy with our town hall meetings and email communications, I think will help ease some of the concerns that appear to be out there in social media world. And again, the enforcement approach, how we approach it, consistency, fairness, tone, all those things matter with how we deal with this. And I think that, again, that's kind of our implementation. That's our pathway to success, in my opinion. And then really kind of our to-do list is equally important. We need to sit down with our staff when we get back to school and really go through this policy. Again, what it is, what it isn't, what is your role as a staff member in this building? Thinking maybe approximately 100 yonder bags or the equivalent of a yonder bag. And then we have to develop how we're going to track the bags. Who has a bag? Did they give it back? Did they damage it? All those things. That's stuff that it's not difficult to work out. We just have to sit down and get it done. And then as we start every school year, we meet with our students in grade level assemblies or smaller. Sometimes we chop up our grade levels to 3 meetings or 2 or 3 meetings to have a smaller crowd and meet and review it with the kids. Make sure they understand it, let them ask their questions, and we'll have to let them voice their frustration, and that's the truth. I mean, but at the same time, we have to kind of work through it with them, help them process this, because it's a big shift. Again, we have to talk with our office staff about probably potentially being inundated with phone calls. Maybe we have more parents frequently visiting, things of that nature. And then we have to work on our practice and our protocol to unlock bags at the end of the day, whether it be with working with a student, holding it until the parent comes here. So like I said, probably more questions not answered just yet than answered, but we know what we need to do. We know what work that needs done, and we need to get our whole team there together collectively to make sure that we are creating a plan that supports our kids, most importantly, and that is feasible in practice. Because I'm a theory and practice person. We have a policy, but it's got to be feasible and doable in practice, or the policy will or will fail. And certainly, we don't want to fail. We want to be successful because we know this will help in the long run. There's no one that can say that the phone is not a distraction. There's no one that can say that school won't be better with the kids not having their phone. It's just that shift it's that shock, I think, for students. So that's where we are right now. And certainly we'll have a lot of this ironed out. But obviously, we'll have it all ironed out before school starts, but be glad to keep you updated via email or anything. And I'm at school every day, and feel free to stop by anytime. Sometimes it gets a little lonely there in the summer, so stop by anytime you wish. All right. Thank you, guys.
Excuse me, do you want us to ask questions before they switch, or what do you?
We'll let them both go, and then we can call them both back.
We'll take the questions together.
Yeah.
All right. I'm Mr. Schaefer, TJ Schaefer. I'm one of the assistant principals. We have a little bit easier time. There's only me, Miss Taylor, and Dr. Nice. So it's sometimes easier to get 3 people together than like the 5 you got at the high school. So we've actually had time to kind of sit down and go over this. Something I didn't include in this that I think is worth mentioning. Last year's policies, the school year we just ended, students were allowed to be on their cell phones in between class transition time, so in the hallways, and at lunch. And when they were in class, the school-wide policy was you were not allowed to be on your cell phone. So we probably have a little bit of an easier transition. Our staff are pretty much used to not allowing them on in the classroom. I mean, it's still a fight. I'm not going to lie that it's every student snap your finger and is following that. But when we sat down, we're just kind of now expanding that to the hallways and lunchtime. So I'm kind of just the meat and potatoes of things. The expectation, we use that word a lot at King George Middle School. We talk about expectations rather than rules. So the expectation will be students shall not have their cell phones or other handheld communication devices on their persons while the school day is occurring. So we're using on their person. So what we're going to tell parents and the students kind of from day one is the cell phone is not on your person. So whether you want to leave it at home or it's in your backpack, or it's in your locker, that is where we're seen as the acceptable spots for your cell phone. We don't want you to have that cell phone in your pocket because that's the addiction part of it, right? If it's easy to reach, you can quickly pull it out and access it. So that motto we're going to have is out of sight, out of mind. We're going to preach that to our staff as well, right? Because it's an addiction. That's what the cell phones are now. So our staff are going to have to get used to out of sight, out of mind. I was already talking to Ms. Higgins. I got to get good at, right? I use it to Google chat people sometimes. I'm going to start just leaving it in my office, and it's going to be out of my mind until the end of the day. So we're going to have to practice what we preach here. So we take that expectation for our students. It'll obviously apply to our staff as well, but we're going to kind of live with the motto of out of sight, out of mind. The school day starts. The cell phones are out of sight, they're not in our minds, and then when the school day ends, they can come back into existence. So we're going to have two different procedures because in our, kind of similar to what Mr. Watson said, we want to avoid having teachers or other staff members get into that power struggle with the cell phone. So we are not going to ask our teachers or staff members to confiscate phones, but us as administrators, we will be doing that. So when I say administrators, it's myself, Dr. Nice, the principal, Ms. Taylor, our assistant principal, and then joining us, Ms. Carrie Pierce is our teacher on administrative assignment. She operates as an academic dean, so she does discipline. We'll see her as an administrator. And then joining us, Elena Wood, who just recently is she'll join us in July. She will be our another assistant principal joining us. So that's our administration. If we have to address a student who is on their cell phone in the hallway or in the lunchroom, or I see them walking out of the bathroom with their cell phone and I address them, I am going to confiscate that student's cell phone. We're going to tell them this prior to coming to school. We're going to tell them this on the first day that we have them, that if we see them on their cell phone or other handheld communication device, then an administrator is going to ask for that device. We are going to confiscate it, and we will reach out to that student's parent or guardian and say, hey, we had to confiscate your student's cell phone. It is here in my possession, in my office, until you can come pick it up. So that way we have found great success in getting the students to meet our expectations at the middle school level when we directly involve parents in that way. So making sure that parent guardian understands that they can come pick it up, but we're not going to probably send it home with that student unless there's pressing circumstances. Well, a case by case basis. If we need to send it home that student, we will. But we really want to bring that parent in, have that quick conversation with them, return the cell phone, and then ideally, from my short experience here at the middle school, I'm going to be in my 4th year. When I've involved the parent in that level, I'm going to see a pretty quick change in that student's behavior. Now, on the flip side, right, obviously, I'm not in every single classroom in every single moment of the day. So if a teacher or staff member sees a student on their cell phone or communication device, that staff member is going to give that student a verbal reminder. Hey, you're not supposed to be on your cell phone. Please put it away, and tell them you are going to get a behavior documentation form. Essentially, that's a referral. We just call them BDFs, or behavior documentation form, at the middle school. So, right, the teacher is going to address the student and tell them they should be off it, and tell them they're going to get a behavior documentation form. The staff member will go and complete that report. That gets sent to the administration. With that, I do say all BDFs, anytime a BDF is written, the expectation is for the staff member who is writing that referral to email home. So they'll hear, the parent or guardian will hear from that teacher, hey, I had to take your student, or I had to remind your student to be off their cell phone today. I did write them a behavior documentation form. Administration will be handling it from this point forward. So that second, right, once the administrator meets with that student, if it's within that same day, so let's say the student is on their cell phone 2nd period, and I meet with them 3rd period, I'm going to confiscate the phone, because I'll say, your 1st period teacher wrote you up, said you're on your cell phone, you need to hand the cell phone into me now, and go through the exact same protocol from step 1. Again, we really want to bring the parents in. We feel like we're going to get the people who break this expectation would be early on. And once we kind of follow these procedures early on, we'll see a severe decrease in the students who fail to meet this expectation. And then we did get together and kind of start working through our discipline policy. So we have kind of a breakdown of occurrences here. So this is just right from our discipline matrix. You have the the offense, right, the definition of the offense, and then we broke it down in terms of we are going to assign a single day of in-school suspension. We don't want to be too extreme. We also don't want to be too lenient. We really want to send a message to the students day one that this is the expectation, and there's a pretty serious consequence here if you do not meet it. And this is right. Obviously, we're still involving that parent by them coming to pick it up. I would obviously communicate to that parent this expectation as well. So we are going to say the first and second occurrence, we're going to keep the same. Now, if the third occurrence happens, at that point, we're clearly seeing there's an issue with this student meeting the expectation. We are going to have a mandatory parent-teacher conference. So bring that teacher in, or bring that parent in, and kind of sit them with their students, teachers, and us to kind of meet with them and explain to them the detriment that the cell phone use is having on their education. But we also, and I put 60 days there for now. This is what we're probably open to kind of messing around with in terms of the length. But we believe a probationary period where, okay, if you've been found, if you get your third offense, now for the next 30 days, the next 60 days, whatever we determine that probationary period to be, is you're going to come to the, you're going to check in with an administrator or check in the main office, and we'll either have a designated spot in the main office, or if we have some yonder bags, as Mr. Watson kind of pointed out, we might have, if we have 20 yonder bags or so, it's like, all right, well, every day for the next 30 days, you're checking in, you're putting your cell phone in that yonder bag, and it's staying right in the yonder bag until the end of the day. So that's just where we're at with that. We don't plan anything past that third occurrence. Just to kind of share, I will say like 95% of our students will meet this expectation with never getting the first occurrence. If you look at kind of our referral data, our discipline data, a large majority of King George Middle School students go through their entire middle school, academic career, never getting a single referral. We have a large group of students who will just follow the expectations that we put in front of them. So when we go to plan what happens if a student doesn't meet that expectation, we're really planning for, probably no more than 50 students, just to give you that input. We feel very confidently as we roll this out, we will get a large number of students to comply. It will be just how we address consistently, as Mr. Watson pointed out, will be important, consistently addressing the students who fail to meet that expectation, and then consistently involving their parents and upholding the expectation that we've created. So that is the end of mine. So I guess we can face the questions together. I will say something. I mean, we send them up to him. They are much different students in middle school. You have, I will say, I don't know off the top of my head, but there's a lot of students that don't get a cell phone until they go to high school. So I think we don't see probably as many students who actually possess a cell phone as you do.
Questions, school board members? And Mr. Rolls?
So, Mr. Schaefer, you kind of answered this one already. My question is, who are the administrators who are going to be taking away these phones? So I was thinking, high school wise, just 3 assistant principals. Is it all going to be on those 3 assistant principals to get phones if they're needed?
So when you look at the, plan, there's a ratio imbalance here in terms of with 1,500 kids and maybe upwards of 6 to 8 people that can actually do this. We have 3 assistant principals. We added a 4th, Melissa Ware, as our special ed assistant principal. We also have a position that we still need to hire, which would make our admin team in terms of administration 6 people. And then we have people that aspire to potentially, gain some administrative experience. But right now we're looking at a 6-person team to pull this off, which is a huge undertaking. But as I said, it's going to be rough as we initially get started. But as we enforce expectations, pull in parents, it'll die down. I mean, it'll become at first, it may be somewhat tough to manage, but we'll get it done, and it will ease up as we move forward. But right now we're a team of 6 to pull this off. We've talked about potentially having our counselors assist if we need to, in a sense. but also looking at a few teachers that seek some administrative type experience to see. It just has to be the right people. We don't want to create an issue from the issue, and that's really where we have to be careful with who we involve. That's not anything saying negatively about our teachers. It's just a different capacity. We don't want to put them in that position. So right now we're 1,500 to 6. So that's what we're going to roll with.
All right,
There's-
thanks.
Well, let's kind of rotate around. We'll see. Others, and we'll come back to you, Mr. Rolls.
Well, that's the problem. Mr. Schaefer, I just had a question about taking responsibility for the phones. Are you not concerned about that, as Mr. Watson pointed out, the value of the phone? Like, is that not concerning you at all?
Maybe slightly. We talked at like something where we're definitely, it will just be the administrators that take it. We talked about finding or getting something in each of our offices where we get the phone, it goes in that, whether it's a little safe or whatever. So we had that discussion, and it's really going to be, ideally, the student's going to be in my office so they can take it and they'll see where it's being put. Right now, like in our in-school suspension room, what she has, she doesn't technically confiscate their phones. She says you're not allowed to have your phone. She makes them. She has a little calculator holder, and they put it in there themselves. And she found that works much better than them having to hand it to her. They go and put it in themselves. So we've talked about the concerns of that. We are always going to keep them in our offices, if that makes sense. We're never going to hand it off to a secretary, or we're not going to. So we're going to have our own policies, procedures we follow. So discussed, yes, concerning, but I've done it before. I've taken a student's phone. It's sat in my office for the whole day. So I'm not too terribly concerned. I also think I will be taking a lot less than the high school. I'm just trying to be totally honest and upfront. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Frank or Ms. Davis?
Yes. Mr. Watson, I see the policy there, and I see it the same way it was when I was at the high school. And I mean, I can remember when there were cell phones at the high school, because it was before cell phone time. But now we have them there. They are a problem. It has been documented throughout, everything that the use of cell phones hamper or hinder the education of children. I don't think physics has changed in the last 30 years, has it? I mean, we still have the physics, right? So 30 years ago, we taught physics without a phone, and I think we should be able to do that now. And if we can't, we have those go, then the county can provide the tools that they need other than having the cell phone. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. I don't understand what you said about you have to get the teachers back in because this is something new. We started talking about this in January. You guys should have, you guys knew the number one goal of the school board in January was to remove cell phones from schools. So why are we why didn't we start talking about that in, March, April, May, so the teachers are on board. They know what to expect when it's coming up.
So we have been talking about it since January with students, teachers, and everyone else. The policy was passed on June 3rd, unless I'm wrong. So when a policy was passed, now we have a policy. Now we take action and work through how we're going to enforce that policy. So I'm not sure what the disconnect is. Simply, we're going to review what the policy is with teachers, let them know their role, and we're going to enforce the policy. So I don't know what.
Well, I think there's several things on that policy. Number one, when most members of the board, I didn't go on this trip, but you did in April. I think you went to Hopewell, to their high school, and you saw the Yonder bags in use, correct?
Yes.
Yes. And the feeling at the time on the board was that we were going to buy yonder bags, and that those yonder bags were going to be paid for through federal funds, which dry up on the 30th of September.
Okay.
So why are we talking about going to pretty much the same thing we have now? Students still have the phone on them or on their possession. Maybe it's in their backpack or wherever. I think what you said was out of sight. But when that thing goes off and it hums, you know, the temptation is there for them to use it. And as soon as it hums, it's a distraction for them. If it's in a yonder bag, you know, the teacher, I mean, the administrators don't have that much work to do. I mean, I've been at the high school, you know, for 25 years. I know that administrators are going to be caught up with other things and not going to be able to go to a classroom and confiscate a phone or whatever, because they're doing other things that are there.
Right. They're not going to the classroom to confiscate the phone. The student will be called down to that administrator's office, similar to what Mr. Schaefer just presented with the middle school.
And that may take all day for that to happen, right?
It might not happen the same day.
This is true.
If we get a kid at 2 o'clock that violates the policy, middle school or high school, that might not happen till the following day. So that's the realistic scenario. Yes.
But students like structure, right?
I would assume so.
Yes. And they're going to meet any standards that we set, no matter no matter how high or how low those standards are. You know, I'm just not, you know, research is out there. Schools and school districts that have gone into cell phone policies, put them in your backpack, out of sight or whatever. 2 years later, they go back to yonder bags, you know, because it works. And I just don't understand why we're not doing that.
Thank you, Mr. Frank. Ms. Davis?
Hi. Mr. Watson, I wanted to tell you that I'm just writing down with you to Hopewell. I already knew a lot about you, but what I learned to appreciate is that you do believe in relationship building with the children. And without consistency, it's not going to work as not building relationships with the children. That has to be both. So I can see the effort you are putting into it to implement this. I see the positivity behind it. One of the things I can say for you is, because I'm with Ed on the yonder bags, but what I do see that you don't have that the other schools did have is they had those first 2 years to start pushing this no cell phone policy, meaning it was like put in your book bag. That doesn't work for the first school year. So they tried something different the second school year. That didn't work. So they went to yonder bags. I guess what Ed is saying is why don't we just learn from them and go straight to yonder bags? And that will take away from the admin having to, you know, be involved as much in things of that nature. But I love the signage. I love the stuff you're doing on there. I'm just concerned from 6 to 1,500 if yonder bag, because you're talking about buying 100.
Approximately, sure.
Yeah. And do you think that's going to be workable?
I would hope so, sure. Because as Mr. Schaefer mentioned, our kids have met this expectation in classrooms for years for teachers that have set that expectation and enforced that expectation and have relationships with kids that is back and forth with mutual respect, and our students meet that expectation. We have teachers in our building where this will be like breathing for them because in their classroom it's been that way. So, you know, we have people from A to Z. We have people who struggle as teachers with the management of cell phones in the classroom to people who never see one all year. So sure, it's going to be a shift. Yes.
For those teachers like me, if I was a teacher, I would be one of those that struggle to enforce the cell phone policy, and I wouldn't want that on me to have to do. But you're saying you don't want to put it on the teachers. But if a student has it out at 11 or 12 o'clock, that's going to be on the teacher till the end of the period if they can't get help. What happens, like, because you had just mentioned, and I didn't even think about that, but if there's no admin to come down and take that cell phone, or the student's not able to go to the office, I guess, how do you see that helping?
Well, I think part of the policy as written is to improve the instructional environment. I believe something along those lines, right? That cell phones are negatively impacting the instructional environment, which I think we can all agree with. If we get into the situation of going to classrooms or sending kids out of class, then we are interrupting instruction for the other kids in the classroom. So rather than have that interruption take place right then, it will be incumbent upon the teacher to notify the administrator and the administrator to call that student down at the appropriate time. It could be the next class. And depending on the time, it could be the next day. I've lived this before as an assistant principal. Sometimes at the end of the day, it bleeds into the next day. Sometimes when it's 2:15 and I call a kid down, I'm not going to take your phone for 15 minutes. So we're going to do this tomorrow. But I'm just telling you tomorrow, I want to see you in the morning with your phone. So it's really just taking the appropriate approach with the student based on the circumstances and the time. I mean, are there going to be times where something doesn't take place if a cell phone referral is given to an administrator at 10 a.m.? Yes, that's going to get missed sometimes because of other things that may occur during the day. Absolutely. But again, then it gets picked back up the following day and we have to work through it that way. I mean, that's just being very real about it. I'm just a very real person. You know, it's not going to be perfect. Giving 1,500 kids a yonder bag, I mean, I know that was mentioned here tonight. I mean, that's just not something that you think about an arrival and a dismissal from a school and the logistics of how that day starts and ends. That's to me, that's just not something that I think would be well received by our students. And I think that it would create more of a disruption and logistical issues for us than dealing with the 4 or 5% of kids that will not meet these expectations. I mean, that's just kind of where my mind is with it.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Well, there'll be other times for more questions.
Go
I want
ahead.
to go through everybody. I'll reserve my questions for the end because I'm sure a lot of mine will probably be asked, but I did want to ask the superintendent something. Yonder bags has been mentioned several times by both of you. A little bit more, I think, of using them possibly in the high school than I heard at the middle school. So in the communication, how many are we tentatively planning on starting school with? Have you discussed that?
It's roughly 200
Is that both high school and middle school for the whole division?
based on their current plan. And
Okay. Oh, go ahead.
could I have a moment?
Yes, you can. You can.
So I know everybody has a lot on their mind. And this inevitably for the next months is going to be a very passionate issue for not only us, not only our school administrators, but our community as a whole. Really started this many, many months ago, committee meetings. And I think it's very important that tonight we take an appreciation of our roles and responsibilities. Superintendent, as school board, and also as school administration, which these are the stakeholder groups currently resting. We passed a policy that said cell phones could not be used in school. It was your responsibility as a school board to pass that policy. If we wanted to get more specific with that, we could pass a policy that says yonder bags if we choose to. I think where it sits right now is in a good place, in my opinion, because the ladies and gentlemen, that are responsible for enforcing this policy are the ones that have the relationships that are going to be so key with our students, with our families, and with our entire community. I think we have, as really the generals of this army, given them an order. I think we have to give them a responsibility or an opportunity to fulfill that order. And I think that's what we're learning about this evening. I would caution us all, too, about this, is that through this every school division in the Commonwealth right now, as we've all seen in the news, is going to do this different. I think one very important consideration in King George County is that we continue to do this with the utmost respect and consideration for every single stakeholder group. We've described this, and we've read about this being the most challenging issue of this generation's time. We've charged school administration to address that. And we've already talked about how that ratio is not going to work in our favor. We have to empower them and we have to give them the support to do that as that stakeholder group. The other important stakeholder group to consider is our children. We have passed a policy now. We have implored them to create practices and procedures in that policy. If we do something, and I'll mention the yonder bags again, on the front end where we tell all of our kids, we're not going to give you any responsibility in this. We're already telling you that we are locking your bag up. Then we've taken all of our kids and not given them, these are 14 through 18-year-old students at the high school level, 12 to 14 at the middle school level, and we've taken already the 95% that Mr. Schaefer said are going to be able to figure this out and said, we don't think you're old enough to take on that responsibility. We don't think you can do it. I kind of like the idea of saying, hey, we do want to give you some responsibility in this policy and in these practices that we're employing. We'll give you a chance to see if you can live up to them, just like every other discipline expectation we have. Every other discipline expectation we have, we set down the expectation on the front end, and then we reinforce that expectation throughout the school year, and then there's consequences associated with not applying or not meeting that expectation. I think that approach has been well laid out here. I know there's some more things that need to be fleshed out. I think it will be throughout the summer. I think they've done a good job so far in talking through it, and I appreciate their efforts. So I just wanted to say that on the front end. And I know there'll be other questions and comments, and like I said, this will continue and probably be very much more passionate right around the start of the school year.
Yes.
So I think it's important, and I'll stop here, that we continue to consider and support every stakeholder group that's going to struggle with this, and we don't dig our heels in and have this become something that's confrontational and becomes, quite frankly, a bigger distraction to public education than the cell phone currently is.
Thank you, Dr. Boyd. Before we start a second round of possible questions, school board members, I'd like us to, first of all, let's be careful not to repeat some of the same questions, even though we may feel the same way. Secondly, let's remember, I appreciate the invitation that both the administrators mentioned, that this might be a good time to talk with you privately about some more questions that we might have and come and see you during this next month or so. And then thirdly, is as we're going through this a second time round, maybe prioritize yours. What would be the next kind of most important question you'd like to see answered? So if we could do that, we'll start with kind of a second round of questions and just really one if you can. And this time we'll start with Ms. Hoover.
I have none.
More?
Nope.
Mr. Rolls.
Just start with a statement. Just Mr. Watson, you're talking about your communication plan. That looked really good. I really like that. Having the town halls in July and the posters and everything, it seems like a great way to approach it. So just want to give you kudos there. Then the other question I had, you somewhat addressed already with Mr. Frank and Mrs. Davis talking. But so I just took note of the 100 yonder bags, however you say it. So it's more, if they're a problem, then they're going to get assigned that. That's when they have to have it. Okay.
If they violate the policy, then we would ask them, rather than taking the phone, we would ask them to come down, lock the phone up, keep possession of your phone, and then we will work out how that bag would be opened back up for you at the end of the day, whether it be, like I said, first time offense. We'll notify your parent and do it with you. Second time offense, potentially parent comes in, or maybe we have a parent come in the first time. We just haven't flushed all those details out just yet.
Okay. Along the same lines for Mr. Schaefer, you talked about confiscating phones and being responsible for them, but we also mentioned yonder bags. I didn't quite catch when you use one versus the other approach. Has that been figured out yet?
To kind of, we think the majority of students are going to follow this expectation without ever getting to that first occurrence. We feel like the yonder bags will be more, basically what we talk about, if we have every kid get a yonder bag from day one, then we're still going to have the kids that don't put in the yonder bag, or, oh, I forgot my yonder bag. We're still going to have to deal with those students. And to be honest, right, the students who are going to play the I forgot my yonder bag and didn't put in my yonder or whatever are going to be the same students that we struggle if we do this route. So what we talked about, especially kind of just thinking of funds as well, is we need the yonder bags for when that student gets to that third occurrence. So first and second occurrence, we're going to confiscate, involve the parent, assign a day of in-school suspension. If it happens a third time throughout the school year, a third time you're caught on your cell phone, that is when we're going to meet with the parent. We're going to develop a probationary period. Right now I have 60 days. So we would say, okay, every day you're going to come in, your phone's going to be in the yonder bag, and you basically have to have a yonder bag for 60 days. And why I think that might be effective, this is how middle schoolers, well, and probably high schoolers function as well. You know, all of your friends have, you know, they don't have a yonder bag, but you do because you've messed up 3 times. I think it will be a good message for the other students as well is, oh, they got caught a couple times and they've gotten in trouble and now theirs in the yonder bag. I still have some responsibility. Mine's just, I'm allowed to, I have mine, but it's in my backpack because I don't use it. So we're going to use the yonder bag as like, you know, if we have them, to kind of after they've failed to meet that expectation 2 other times. So on that 3rd time they fail to meet that expectation, we would assign them, you know, we'd go through the same steps, but then they'd have a probationary period. Right now I have 60 days. When we talked about, we talked about adjusting that and maybe doing a 30, 60, 90 or something similar, to kind of how like some school board decisions are with, you know, mandatory searches or things like that.
Thanks.
Hi, Ms. Davis. So another question.
Sure. Who's set this up today? Whose idea was this?
Well, we talked about, if you can remember, 2 things. One was that Dr. Boyd would possibly, during the superintendent's report, possibly give an update. And then also, as they were coming up with the process that they were going to follow, the policy that we decided they would report to us. So we talked ahead of time, we'd have presentations before the school year started.
Okay. Well, I appreciate it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Because I do understand that it is our job to create the policy and you guys are to create the procedure. And you guys it's hard. I did want to talk with you, Mr. Watson, but Jesse was, I think, protecting. You told me that's your job. And so are we allowed to talk to them?
Oh, yeah, yeah. No, especially about this, yes.
No, I mean, going into the school and talking.
Oh, yeah.
Sure. You can
Yeah.
come anytime you want.
Okay. No, okay, because I want you to know that I want to support you as much as I can and give you everything you need to do. But you two, yours is a little bit easier. Like you said, you have a lot less kids and you already had to implement a process going and you have less kids that had phones. So it's going to be real tough. I want to help out, not to judge or anything. I just want to be another set of hands in the beginning, especially if you need that. So we support you. We just really want this to be successful. It's really big on our hearts that the kids, we've just seen it work at other schools that are doing it. And I think that's where you're feeling that pressure of like, let's just use yonder bags. But obviously, I support you. Just, yeah.
And I feel confident in our people. I feel confident in our plan. I feel confident in our mindset that we want this to be successful. This is not me standing here saying I don't support the policy. Certainly I do. I feel confident in it. I also feel confident that I work with very competent people that are very good at their job. And it's like anything else. Every day in our building, we have to adjust and pivot and modify based on what we're dealing with. And, this isn't any different. I mean, it's a bigger task in some respects, but this is what we do every day. We have expectations for kids when they meet them, and 95% of our kids do. When they meet them, it's great. Sometimes one of the 95% don't meet it, and it's a little bit of but at the same time, we have great kids in our building. We have great staff. We have very competent administration, very good administration that will work through this, and we want it to be successful as well. Because at the end of the day, while the work will be hard on the front end, it will create a better environment for our kids in the building. And again, that's the end game. That's the end result. That's what we all want.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Mr. Frank?
Yes, Mr. Watson, I think you guys have put and TJ, I think you guys have put a lot of work into this. My concerns are that it's successful. And number 2, that it takes a burden away from the teachers. That right now, they've got so much on their plate that they can't handle or they shouldn't be handling anything else other than teaching. And I hope that your plan will work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Frank. I had a couple of comments. First of all, I've been through this as a high school principal. I think I may have mentioned that even publicly before. At my last school before I retired 13 years ago, there was a 2-year period in which we were implementing pretty similar cell phones are prohibited during the school day kind of policies. At the beginning, it was difficult. I made changes because, you think the policy looks great. So I guess number 1, I want to encourage you. Obviously, this looks fine. I do see some possible flaws having been through this. But I know that as you see something's not working, then there might be a shift in things. And I want to assure you that we as a board will understand that. Second thing is I can say that when I implemented some of these, I won't go into all what I did. Some of you heard that we ended up actually changing a lot of the calling parents and coming in second time. And I did something that we found out from legal authorities that we can't do in Virginia, and that is if they were caught with it, they simply at the end of the day paid $15 and they got it back. It sounded kind of funny and it was a joke at first, but then after a month or two, boy, it worked. But we can't do that here. Sounded great in Texas, and Texas is different than Virginia. But I will say something else I think is very important in this, is that at the beginning of doing any of the procedures and applications for trying to follow the policy, there was a tipping point that occurred. Once I got between a third and half of my teachers. Now, I was a smaller school. I didn't have the size that we have here. I only had one assistant principal. And I did use another one to help with this. So I had teachers had to buy into this. And the same problem that you have recognized, especially I heard it from you, Dr. Watson, is that you didn't want the teachers to be, the cell phone police. And I had the same problem. But I did have about a third to half of my teachers that did buy into it because they saw it as a real problem. And they became, quote, even though they didn't like it, the cell phone police. But what started to happen? It was difficult at first. But as it started to work, even though it was very hard, more, not only teachers, but even students saw the value in not having those cell phones out every lunch and down the hallways. And then more teachers actually saw it was not so difficult to do because more students were willing to abide by it. So I want to say that, even you're not going to have 100% of your staff on board with this, even to the point, and I know you probably already know this, is that there may not make a report right away. But I want to encourage you that as you see this working, that I believe it will be like a snowball. And then it will be easier. At the beginning, it's going to be tough. But as you go forward and trying to remain as strong as you can, making slight adjustments, I believe that there'll be more buy-in as the year goes on. So I just wanted to encourage you with that. All right. Any others from Dr. Boyd? Back to you again. Any last comment?
Thank you, gentlemen. We really appreciate your effort, and we're here to support you any way we can. The school year starts. So it's very important that we all stay with open lines of communication and
Yes.
we work through it as a community together. So thank you guys. We appreciate you.
I've got one more question, please. Mr. Watson and Mr. Shaver too. What's your expectation of how long this is going to take to become? Are we talking first semester will be good? Are we talking the end of the school, the end of second semester will be good?
I hope not. I hope it doesn't take that long. I mean, it's hard to
I
quantify.
think I was going to say, I
Yeah.
think the question is, what is good? I think we're always going to have, just like every one of our discipline expectations, 5%, which really hasn't been talked about outside of the 95%. But I think we have good kids and we have good staff, and I think for the most part, the majority of them, the 95%, and you guys have the boots on the ground, but I think our kids, traditionally from what I knew, are going to follow expectations on the front end. You're going to be dealing with 5%, probably for a long time.
I agree we have great kids, but we also have a lot of addiction. So
Well, and with that said, I think we have to help our kids understand what that is too, because they need to understand what addiction is. They don't necessarily think of addiction; they're thinking of substances most of the time. They don't think of the addiction as the cell phone, but it absolutely 100% is true. So not only do we have to make sure we're employing something that's in practice to, in a sense, have consequences to make sure we're enforcing a policy and communicating that with them, we have to make sure that our counselors, that our teachers are talking to them about, hey, we have to make sure that we are dealing with this. I mean, we're going to see kids who literally, they're going to be shaken. I mean, it's an addiction. It truly is an addiction. And it's an addiction that I think we have the right staff and the right kids to really combat that. Do I believe, and this is, again, I'm a very open, straightforward person. Do I believe that we will have this utopia where we will ever have a day where we don't confiscate a phone for the foreseeable future? I do not. I do not. Do I think that 98%, maybe 99% of our kids are going to meet that rather quickly once they see how things are going and see consequences and things of that nature? I think we're going to be okay probably, I would say, after September. By the time we hit October, I think we're going to be in a really, really good place. But again, I've been an administrator for 15 years, and that 3 to 5% of students, they're in every building, and they struggle to meet expectations despite positive relationships. We just have to keep working on them, working on them, and working on them. Some of those 3% figure it out, and unfortunately, some of them don't. But we never stop trying. We never stop trying to reach them.
Very good. Last comments, Ms. Hoover, last one. Mr. Rolls, last comment. Ms. Davis?
The exciting part of it is like, once the middle school kids start going up into the high school, it's going to get easier, that rotation, because they're cell phone policy in the middle school and it's already there in the high school. So I think it'll get a lot easier as the years go by too.
Mr. Frank, last comment? All right, I also want to thank you very much. I appreciate it, and also want to encourage board members, and yes, Ms. Davis, I think that in this kind of thing, especially in the summertime, if we got more questions, yeah, just go on up to the school and talk to either one of them. Make sure they're there, not on vacation, but outside of that, I think that would be good to have that ongoing conversation. All right, thank you very much. Appreciate all your work.
Thank you.
Okay, do I have a motion to go into closed session?
I move that pursuant to State Code Section 2.2-3712A of the Code of Virginia, that the board convene in closed session to review hires, substitutes, resignations, and employee performance, and for discussion specifically of the lieutenant's contract. Looks like there's something missing here, and also to talk about options for a third-party investigation of some school board employees' allegations of misconduct as permitted under the 2.2-3711A1 of the Code of Virginia.
Have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. We're now in closed session. Yeah, the mic is on. Anybody's mic? Is it just mine? Oh, no, it's on. Sorry. Sorry, now it's on. All right, do I have a motion to return to open session?
I move that the King George County School Board return to open session and certify that pursuant to State Code Section 2.2-3712D, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements under this chapter and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or considered in the meeting by the public body.
Second?
So certify.
Certify.
The board also certifies. So now we are in open session. Do I have a motion to approve? We're going to have a couple of motions here, but the first one, do I have a motion to approve the personnel as presented? Wait, let me turn your mic
Come
on.
on.
Now
Is
it's
that all I need to say? I move to approve the personnel matters as presented.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. They are approved.
I move that we approve the contract employee, Dr. Boyd, that was signed on May 23rd, 2024 by Dr. Boyd and Chairman Bush. That will be effective July 1st.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Contract is approved. All right, now moving on with the agenda. We have, you wanted to move that first action item down to the discussion item. Was that right, Mr. Rolls?
Yes.
All right, so we're going to go to B, policy GBEA. And Dr. Boyd, if you could give me just a second. For some reason, I'm signed out of my computer. All right, go ahead, Dr. Boyd.
Yes, sir. This policy and the next regulation was the policy and regulation that we brought before you last time. You wanted to see the strike-through version. I think we attempted to do that as best we could, but we did want to mention that the policy was not in existence at all. It was removed from the policy manual, brought back into the policy manual, and now revised in this fashion. Is that correct, Ms. Wazirski? So it is on for action tonight. This is the drug and alcohol-free workplace policy, and then also the regulations for the drug and alcohol-free workplace.
Got a question on that, if I may.
Questions? Go ahead.
Just trying to remember. So did VSBA drop it, or why did it get removed?
I have my big stack of notes here. So a previous board back in 2017 wanted to remove that policy. Okay, and it was missed. So at your meeting on 1/31/24 of this year, that policy with the accompanying regulation was removed. So it was no longer part of our policy as of January 31st of 2024. And it came out of the ad hoc committee back in 2017. It was repetitive and it overlapped a few of the other policies. So the recommendation was to remove that policy, and they referred to some of the other policies. GBEA, which you are approving the regulation for GBEA this evening, was one of them.
What was redundant? It was redundant at one time, but then what made it redundant was also removed from policy, right?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear you.
You said it was redundant. I'm sorry. Mike, first time I've ever been accused of being too quiet.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
So you were saying, though, I'm trying to remember what we talked about. The policy was removed because it was redundant. There were other policies. But since then, the SBA also removed the policy that made it redundant. So now we're bringing it back.
Correct.
Well, I mean, this is currently in our policy manual under the struck out name, right?
Yeah, GBEA is in your policy manual.
Right.
It's right there right now. But what wasn't included was the regulation.
Okay, so but the main change here for the policy is just to change the name to emphasize that not only do we not want drugs, but we also don't want alcohol in the workplace.
Correct. And honestly, the regulations previously, like without these regulations, really we didn't have anything in our policy manual that addressed the alcohol piece. So that's why we need that back in the in the policy.
Gotcha.
Well, I'm glad that's added now. Any other questions about this before?
We do, I do.
No.
Go ahead.
So understanding now that, do you want to go ahead and say it?
I can. If you look at the title of this is Drug and Alcohol Free Workplace. But you look at the first sentence there, the King George County School Board is committed to maintaining a drug-free workplace. Shouldn't we add alcohol into that? I mean, I guess it's the VSBA that put this stuff together, right?
Are you referring just to the policy itself?
Yes, he is.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Yes. My recommendation would be to put that word, we can put that word back in there if it's not there.
Okay, it's not there. And then if we go down to the second paragraph, first sentence, within 30 days of receiving notice from a school board employee. Shouldn't that be a school system employee or a school?
Employees of the school board. We can change, I mean, that's your,
Oh,
that's
no,
up to
no,
you.
no. It's mentioned a number of ways. Then down at the bottom, last sentence on that page, King George County School Board shall establish a drug-free awareness program. Should that be drug and alcohol?
So you want to change both of those at the title and then also on that sentence?
Yeah.
It just has a disciplinary for drug use. If you read it, there's no disciplinary for alcohol use on school property or like a DUI or anything. On the next one, you do have it on the
On the
GBEA-R.
regulation, correct. It's all there. So we need to go back and just update GBEA.
Yes.
Add
Okay.
that word alcohol,
That's good.
Yes.
those two places. Any other discussion? I think we could still have a vote with those changes as,
I think it's 3 places, but she's got it. Yeah, okay. Did you hear me? She got it, yeah.
do I have a motion?
I move that we approve policy GBEA as amended.
Seconded?
I
Second.
second.
More discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. It's passed. Now GBEAR. Any discussion or changes there? Because it's interesting, Mike was already mentioned, you do have drug and alcohol free there.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing that up. There's Mr. Frank and Miss Davis. Any other discussion? Do I have a motion?
I move that we approve regulation GBEAR.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. All right, next is the norms and protocols. And remember, I think the second time this has been here, and I believe the changes have been made. But any further discussions, or does somebody feel the changes have not been made?
You update the date at the top as well.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
And I guess the only thing I would just suggest is for the very last thing that we added the norms and protocol review. It currently says the school board will review the norms and protocols at least every 2 years, which I think that's generally our intent, but I'd like to add some clarification that it's not just a review or you pull something out and you read it on your own. It's official board action. So perhaps the school board will review, update, and approve the norms and protocols. And it's not just every 2 years. I mean, because we did it this year, June 24th, it doesn't have to be June 24th or earlier in 2 years. My intent is just that it should be every year after an election, because since the board often changes. So we could just say at least every even numbered calendar year. I mean, that's our intent, isn't it? And this is will. I don't care about this as much, but we can't really tell other boards what to do. But you show up and you kind of want to just know, okay, well, how's it been done? We could possibly change that to the school board is encouraged to, but I don't care about that so much. What are your thoughts?
We can. I don't think it's that level of importance, but if the rest of the board feels so, I will go with the will of the board. What do others feel?
What's the importance of moving it from every calendar year, 2 years?
Well, because I see, because every 2 years, then we did it June this year, then maybe next time in 2 years, they got to do it earlier in June or May, and then it's April, and it's keep moving up every time. And I don't care that it's done within 2 years, just within that calendar year. So if any time in 2024 would have been good, and any time in 2026 would be fine. And then again, anytime in 2028 would be fine. I don't care that it's earlier than 2 years from June 24th.
I hear you. I just don't know if we need that level of specificity. I understand what you're saying, but I don't know. Up to the will of the rest of the board.
I don't know how it moves up if, oh, you're saying, okay, yeah, I don't care. I don't care. Just give it to him. That's enough.
Okay, go ahead and give us your exact wording, Mr. Rolls.
The school board will review and approve the norms and protocols at least as often as every even numbered calendar year.
Awkward. It sounds awkward. Can you improve that a little bit? Maybe
It's the best I could do. What do you got?
What he's saying is because but it's still 2 years. That's the only thing that.
I could drop as often and just say at least every even number calendar year.
Will review and approve the norms and protocols every even number calendar year.
Sure.
I think it's fine the way it is.
I do too.
It's every 2 years from now and we're in an even year.
Other thoughts? Need,
Help.
okay. Well, no, I have a difference. I really do. Okay, Ms. Hoover, we want to be respectful of everybody. Ms. Hoover wants to leave it like it is. Mr. Rolls wants to change.
Well, we do need to change review and approve. We do need to change that, but the every 2 years is,
Okay.
right, is that right, Matt? Review and approve, is that what we said?
I just, I would, if we're gonna change it, then change it and let him have his way about it. He obviously sees an importance of it. I don't see it, but that doesn't mean it's not legit.
Mr. Frank?
If we're going to change it, we're going to add in review and approve norms. We can put in. What do you? Yeah. That's
All right, we have 3 board members that wanted, I would leave it the same and just, I would add approve. I'm with Ms. Hoover, but I don't see this as necessarily taking a vote. I'm fine with it if it's that important. So did you get
I
that?
support the last way that you said it, Mr. Bush, where you said, well, school board will review and approve the norms protocols at least every even number calendar year. You cut out a couple of words from what I had said before, so.
And I'm not voting to change it. I'm just, so I don't want it.
No, it's okay.
Yeah. I don't want to change it either, but obviously he sees an importance and I want to validate it.
Get that, Dr. Boyd? I don't even think
Right.
you need to put at least. Will review and approve every even number calendar year.
School board will review and approve the norms and protocols every.
I think also, well, it's fine.
All right. That sound all right with everybody? Sure. Do I have a motion to approve the norms and protocols with, as amended?
I move we approve the norms protocols as amended.
Have a second?
Second.
Davis seconds the motion. Do I have any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion is approved. All right, next is the FYI 25 budget approval. Dr. Boyd, I know you had a meeting with the Board of Supervisors, so go ahead.
Yes, so the Board of Supervisors met last week. Many of you were in attendance. This is really a formality at this point. Following the appropriation resolution from the King George County Board of Supervisors on June 18th, 2024, the responsibility of King George County School Board to approve the annual budget allocation. The appropriation for consideration and approval by the King George County School Board takes into consideration expenditures and revenue forecasts that align with the budget adopted by the Virginia General Assembly. Following a very collaborative and as a result productive budget season, the Board of Supervisors allocated $63,108,152 for King George County schools. These funds will help the school division make significant progress towards the goal outlined in our strategic plan. And then you can see there how the funds were allocated into these 6 operating categories. These again are the exact same numbers that we did informally approve at the work session earlier in the year. I recommend that we approve the budget allocation in the amount of $63,108,152. The operation of King George County Schools for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2024 and ending the 30th day of June 2025.
All right, this is an allocation, so it's one of these kinds of things. It is
Money.
exactly what we already did vote on, but now it's an approved allocation by the Board of Supervisors. So do I have a motion?
A quick question, if I may. So, Dr. Boyd, so obviously you've had the good fortune this year that's not going quite down to the wire like it has in recent years. But we didn't actually know the state budget till fairly recently. How did that compare to our assumptions in the end?
Say that again.
So we approved the budget with basic, we were having to assume what we thought we were going to get from the state. So we didn't get a final number for the state until more recently. So how did that compare?
So it was slightly less than we, after the final budget from the state, we did receive slightly less from the state. In the amounts of, Sherry was still working out some final figures, but it was somewhere in the ballpark of between $20,000 and $30,000. We can make up that difference in different areas of the budget, but based to your point, based on the final allocations from the General Assembly and the revisions that they did with the budget, we did come out a little bit short.
That's because of the calc tool or something related to that?
No, if you remember, we're still waiting for the General Assembly to arrive at a final conclusion. The governor had gone back and forth with a few amendments, and then they came to an agreement. And then that final budget allocation, which again, to Mr. Rolls' point, used to be something that county would wait for, most schools, we would all wait for. Felt pretty confident. I think everyone felt pretty confident in what that final number was going to be, but there was still going to be some variability based on the governor's recommendations and so on. So it did come out with us making a few less dollars in terms of revenue. So certainly something to consider moving forward. And of course, it's not of our decision.
I know.
We're not even fully staffed, right? So even just our staffing shortage would more than cover that, right?
And we are still going to look at the possibility of maybe some money coming in on August, as the Board of Supervisors mentioned. The possibility of having money left.
Oh yes, I'm sorry. I thought you said someone, but yeah. So we I think we still have a standing date with the Board of Supervisors to revisit the issue of carryover funds.
Correct.
From this year's operating budget into next year.
Right. Okay, so this is about 30,000 less than what we voted on last month.
What I understand right now, according to this.
All right. Do I have a motion?
I move that we approve the budget allocation in the amount of $63,108,152 for the operation of the King George County Schools for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2024, and ending the 30th day of June, 2025.
Have a second?
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Chair votes aye. Motion is approved. All right, going on now to the recruitment teacher incentive.
So again, this is something that we do through our HR department annually. The 2022 General Assembly Special Session 1 appropriated funds to support the recruitment efforts through incentive payments to individuals hired to fill instructional positions in that tight window of time. If you remember, this is the RIPE grant that we see. We're on our 3rd year now. And it's anybody that we hire between August 14th, 2023 and November 30th, 2023. Eligible teachers receive an incentive of $5,000. So we're at the point now where we are requesting those funds to approve the recruitment incentive for public education, the RIPE grant, in the amount of $70,000 because that is what the state would award us. So I believe that's what we have to request on the front end. However, we have enough teachers to qualify for $60,000 of that. So what you'll see is a slight difference there. The division received notification on June 2024 of grants being available at King George County Schools. This will allow the division to award a total of $60,000 to 13 teachers who were hired between that window of time. These teachers were hired to fill hard-to-staff positions, and they will receive $5,000 grants if we are able to approve that this evening.
I have a question. Never mind. The deadline was the 23rd of November. I was going to say, will the 10,000 still be available? But never mind.
Do I have a motion? Or is there further questions?
I move that we approve the recruitment incentive for public education grant in the amount of $70,000, of which we'll utilize $60,000 to award eligible teachers.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion carries. Discussion items. The first one is a request of I made you a doctor. Mr. Rolls to move the employee social media use, the GAB, IIBA-R and GAD-R to a discussion item. So let's go back up to that and begin with that. Mr. Rolls, let us know your reasoning for wanting.
So I'll let you know. I marked it up pretty good here. So last time we were talking about what policy should fall under, and I suggested GCPD, but I hadn't really looked at it deeply. But so I see now that we selected GAD, which that policy title is access to employee social media accounts. And that didn't quite seem right to me. So I just asked Dr. Boyd if you want to talk to that.
Yeah, so we talked about this in the school board office. We do currently have a policy, GAD, which is in terms of the school division's access to employee social media accounts. We thought that this regulation would fit well into the school division's desire to access school employee social media account, because this regulation discusses appropriate social media use. The policy references our ability to evaluate and review social media accounts of our employees. So we thought it fit well.
Well, so I mean, I see this more as just like a discipline issue, like what's appropriate use of social media. And then I went and read that access to employee social media accounts, and it talks about, if there's criminal allegations or suspicion of criminal conduct, that we can ask for their login information for their social media accounts, which makes sense. But then if you make this a regulation to that, and you go down to the last paragraph in the scope and purpose section, it reads, all other King George County school policies extend and apply to all forms of staff member communications made via social media, regardless of whether the staff member's use of social media occurs at work or outside of work. To the extent permitted by law, King George County Schools reserves the right to investigate staff members' use of social media to ensure a safe and productive educational environment, to ensure compliance with this and other board policies, and to ensure compliance with applicable laws. So whereas the original policy just said instead if we were investigating you, then we can ask for your login information for your social media accounts, which I thought, okay, but now then it takes that, and you could read this to say that if we're going to investigate you, not just because you did something illegal, but because we think that you're not using it in a way that helps with safe and productive environmental education environment, or that you're breaking one of our policies, then we can essentially ask you for your login information for your social media, which I found that unsettling. So I don't like that implication there. So I just want to make it clear that we're not saying that, and I think it doesn't really fit well under any policy. Because I went and looked, before I had thrown out the possibility of the policy about professional staff discipline. But that's much broader than social media, and there's already a regulation for that. So I agree that it wouldn't go there. So my best idea right now would be to take elements or most of the scope and purpose section and make that a new policy about social media use, and then the more detailed stuff down below could become a regulation based on it. But again, I'd have concerns well, and then what that would help with too is that if it's no longer connected to the GAD, which is the access to employee social media accounts, there wouldn't really be that implication that just because we think your social media doesn't comply with their policies, that we're going to come ask you for your login information for your social media accounts. Does that make sense?
Saying? Is that what it's saying? It's not saying that. Where are you at?
I'm referring to the parent policy, GAD, which is not here. You'd have to go look at that on the policy manual.
Can we put that on the next agenda?
That's why I made a discussion item. There's a lot here. I almost need to send this out to you all to look at.
So I'm sorry, Mr. Rose. So did you discuss this with Dr. Boyd already, which you've written? I see a lot of changes that you made.
I sent him a copy of this, but I mean, we all need to kind of discuss it to see what you
I
all
agree
think.
with that. Did you look at it and,
I got it this morning.
you just got it this morning? That's okay.
Yeah, it was
Let's,
late last night.
okay, let's do this. Can you write out, because I see what you're looking at there, when you made a lot of suggestions and changes. Can you maybe send what you have right there to the four of us so we can discuss this next time? Because there's so much there and it's a little confusing. I hear what you're saying, but I didn't quite get all of it.
Right.
Can you send us what your notes, maybe clean them up if you want to a little bit? Not just to Dr. Boyd, but include him, obviously. But send it to all of us so we can kind of read, because you got a lot.
And be looking at it while we talk about it.
It's too much to take in right now, Mr. Rolls. Is that?
I just didn't even know that's what I was lost because I'm looking at this one that's on our agenda.
So if you could send that, plus maybe include the other policy that you think they're connected. Do that, Mr. Rolls.
Sure.
All right. Then we can put this on the agenda next time for discussion. I don't think there's any emergency with this. But I see you've done a lot of work, Mr. Rolls, so I'm kind of respecting all your work that I can see here. Which,
Wait, okay.
Go ahead.
Well, I see where he's saying it's on the action item and he moves it to
we moved to
discussion,
discussion, and he
but
had a lot
it's
of questions.
GAB. No, I want to hear
Well,
it too. GAD-R is right here. I thought I just didn't see that part.
I was talking about GAD, the policy that this would fall underneath.
So he'll send us that.
Okay.
And then we'll have it a discussion action next time. Item. All right. Next, and it's number A under discussion item, GCBC-R staff fringe benefits. Dr. Boyd.
This is our policy that references the change in our retiree sick leave payout. So what you'll see is just a couple scratches. In that first paragraph, you'll see the last sentence. Employees who do not enroll in the school division sponsored health insurance plan will receive a $20 monthly opt-out payment. We're scratching that if you remember. And then below, we changed the values from, I'm looking at the last paragraph on the first page, from 5,000 to 10,000. There's one other spot that we changed from 5,000 to 10,000 to really update the policy in the manner described through the budget.
This is the item we discussed quite a bit in the past, correct? Any,
So there was, despite raising it from 5,000 to 10,000, the table that has the number of accumulated sick days and the available months of insurance, where we, instead of getting them that 5,000 or 10,000 back, you would get a monthly payment towards their health insurance. That's unchanged.
Not changed. That has not changed. So this was a plan put in place by the former administration. And the only, what this plan was at the time was that you had, as a retiring employee, you had the option to receive at that time either a $5,000 payout or this option where you could turn in a certain number of sick days for access to our health care upon retirement. So we did not change that right now because we currently do have some employees that use that program. That would not change. The option still exists for our employees. You can either receive the $10,000 payout based on the revision or elect to use your sick leave accumulated days for health insurance, as was written in the former policy.
And so are we, the school board, it does say that, yes, it's the school board paying the $300 per month for that.
Yeah, and that's been on the books already.
Yeah.
That's That has not changed.
Okay. So if it's there, then yeah, it seemed like a curious calculation. If you do the math, it seems like it works out to like over $1,400 per sick day is kind of what we're calculating them being worth, which seem really high, but I mean, it's
And in the future, if we desire to look at that and change it, it's certainly a big budgetary decision, but I understand what you're saying as far as the number of days.
right. But yeah, so I guess you don't have any insight into how somebody calculated that. I don't think it was 5 school board members sitting there with their calculators figuring out, okay, how much we should give for this. But it's, okay. I'm fine with the 5,000, 10,000 change. I just was curious about the history.
We can discuss that this coming year if you want to. Any other discussion? We could move this to an action item because this has been discussed before. What's the opinion of the board? If there's,
I move to approve GCBCR staff fringe benefits as presented.
I second.
any further discussion? All those,
I guess I do wonder if it'd be benefit just like if we wait till next time, if we could get the history on that table. And just,
say it again.
I can't hear you at all, Matt.
so I wonder if we wait till next time, if it would be, if it would not be too much trouble just to find out where that table came from. Because I mean, are we going to talk about it again? I doubt we're going to bring it up
I guess
again.
What we're saying is this, the table is something we can discuss in the future, but the change right now is primarily the 5 to the 10,000.
Right.
That was a
I mean, I don't think we will talk about this table again. There's not really any reason to, unless we just. do
Well,
it.
we can make
So,
sure for the next budget year that we talk about it. It's very appropriate. You can ask Dr. Boyd to make sure that it's, I know it's kind of 6 months, 7 months away, but it's still worthwhile putting in there that we will discuss this chart at the next budget cycle, which would be in probably February, March. Is that
Okay.
acceptable? Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Chair votes aye, motion carries. And yes, make that note. I think it's a good note to make, as include in our budget discussion as you present the budget next year. All right, the next one is board members orientation.
So we discussed this at the retreat. Again, this is just an adjustment of that first sentence. First sentence was a bit confusing because of, I guess, when the policy was written, it read within 2 weeks following his or her important appointment through 1995 or election beginning November 1995. Each new board member shall receive an intensive orientation and so on. We decided at the work session to scratch that all the way up to the first comma and replace it with prior to taking off.
And by the direction of the superintendent. I like that, but I do think it would be more than the superintendent. I mean, because I know I might not have done a very good job with it, but I spent a couple hours with the 2 new board members before they were prior to taking office. So it could be direction of the superintendent, but could also be a board chair. I'm just thinking it's important to hear from not just the superintendent, but from one of the people that's been on the board for a period of time. It doesn't have to be even the board chair, but
I just wonder if we need to codify that, or if we just, because you just did it without even knowing this policy existed,
yeah. I
right?
did it
So
because it
I don't
made
think,
sense.
I don't know that we need to put it in the
It
policy.
just says under the direction of the superintendent, so he could,
Just leave it.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
He could make sure that,
I just think it'd be valuable, and I'm
When
not
you're
saying
not
we need
here,
to
he
change it.
can
Yeah,
do it.
no, I'm definitely agree. And we don't need to change it, but it might, in fact, it might be valuable even for you and it doesn't even have to be the board chair, but you and a experienced board member to do that. But
I think if you're gonna
your direction.
put it anywhere, it maybe just be the protocol as a, less formal, because that's something, because the policy manual is thousands of pages long. No new board members even gonna look, I didn't even know this existed till you mentioned it the other day. So I'm glad that we found this, because it's important, a good thing to start doing,
All right. Well, we can go ahead and we don't need to wait till next time. We can just approve this like it is unless there's,
I agree.
all right, do I have a motion?
I move that we approve policy BBC.
as
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Votes aye. It's approved. All right.
Regular meeting.
Now, meeting regular agenda.
Yes, Mr. Chair, this again was born out of our work session. This is in our policy manual under BDDC-F1. This is our King George County School Board meeting regular agenda. We had discussion about the ability for the board and the superintendent to respond following public comment. And I think following the work session conversation, we agreed that it would be appropriate to have a brief superintendent comment following public comment.
Are we ready?
Mm-mm.
Why?
I'm trying to,
That was the only change.
Yeah.
where's board comments?
It's number 15.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm getting tired. I got up at 3 this morning. All right. Yeah, I think that's fine. I'm sorry. No, I mean, that's fine. I guess the question would be, obviously, if we don't have any public comment, then the superintendent doesn't need to make a comment. I assume that's obvious.
Not necessarily the title there. I mean, I guess we could say superintendent response to public comment, and then it'd be more obvious.
Yeah. That would be fine. And well, let me ask another question with this, and I'm not saying I like the idea, especially the superintendent, maybe rather than a board member. But are we saying that if there is a public comment, will he feel an obligation that he needs to say something almost regardless, or just leaving it up to the superintendent? He may not need to say anything.
Yeah,
think-
I would just leave it up to the superintendent and to whether he needs to address or clarify, things that are going on.
That I really like, especially when there's some very clear misunderstandings.
Yes.
I agree to that totally. That's some very clear misunderstanding. I just don't want the superintendent to feel that he's obligated, that because a comment was made or 2 or 3 that he has to say something. But definitely, I agree, when there's some misunderstandings or maybe something we've already voted on or whatever, I think that's excellent. Okay. Any further discussion
Well,
about?
yeah, I guess, I mean, of course, it obviously would only be about administrative things. And if anything where it's coming up, controversy about policy, then that's got to wait for board members to talk about. But then there's also the point where I have concerns sometimes when people take the time to be here and they make comment and then they have to wait hours sometimes before it gets to board comment to get any kind of response from us. And I think that kind of might dissuade them from coming and participating. Kind of to Mr. Watson's point he made before about, I think he's talking about like a town hall, or I think there's some other things talking about with the whole cell phone policy about giving people an outlet to come and participate and give comment versus just showing up on social media and spewing everything there. So I think there's some benefit to allowing people to come here and have comment and have the expectation to hear from us fairly quickly without, and to be able to talk in a more constructive manner. And because, a lot of times people came, a lot of people showed up, they wanted to be heard, COVID or whatever else. And again, it's literally hours later when by that time we've kind of forgotten some things that have been said, and I don't think we can really do it justice. But if we added that, I would entertain something like we keep it brief. It's we maybe with our protocol, we limit it to 3 minutes per board member. Because we don't want it to be this long thing, but.
This is why we shouldn't limit the work sessions, because we totally talked about this at the work session. And that is why we agreed at the work session that Dr. Boyd would address those teachers that did come and that he would address that. It doesn't have to be a complaint to let the teachers or whoever know that we saw and heard them. And he knows us enough to know whether we would want to address them. And then the other thing we also agreed on is technically we still can make a comment. We just need to be we're just not trying to open that door, I guess.
As listening to this, I'm thinking about, first of all, I think about the whole COVID issue back a couple years, 2.5 years ago, whenever it was. And I'm thinking about the cell phone issue. There might be some validity, possibly the book thing. There might be some validity to have more of a board town hall meeting to where we're listening to comments, again, limited, and then actually have the actual meeting, which would be not a work session, but a meeting where we've got a lot of concerned parents, and the whole meeting can involve 3 minutes apiece, and then after they're all finished, or some way of us maybe responding to that.
Town hall?
But like, yeah, like a town hall. I don't know if that's, but I'm just thinking, I'm thinking about the cell phone issue. Maybe during the beginning of the year, because we will probably have a lot of parents that we want to be above board, and having them limit them, obviously, and then having them talk to 3 minutes, and then maybe even some sort of response. It's, we don't have to make the decision tonight, but I'm just thinking there may be a couple, and I can only think of about 3 things in the last couple of years that we would do this with. It's just a thought. It'd be a totally
They're gonna
different.
be probably more bothered by the procedure, which we don't really have a lot of. I mean, I just don't know what we'd say.
It may be a bad idea. I'm sorry. I'm trying to
Well-
think about what you're saying,
I
not necessarily making it a standard thing.
think Edwin.
I think that's a good idea. I think the more involvement we get from the community, the better off we're gonna be. If we have a town hall meeting, we could use one of our, I mean, is it possible to use the next school board meeting or the one after that as a town hall meeting? And advertise that for parents who want to come in and talk about the cell phone policy. They know we'll know where they're coming from. They'll know where we're coming from as far as why we're doing this and, you know, why it's important for it to be done. We'll know what their concerns are as far as, you know, emergency contact with their kids or whatever, which we don't have that in our policy. We're going to talk about our policy a little later. But I think there's a lot of things that we can change in our policy to make it better. So, well, I think that's a good idea to have
I would make it, I obviously I agree because I mentioned it. Yeah. But I would not necessarily use one of the current, because we got a lot of stuff we need to cover. Maybe have a separate date that we could talk about in July, where we'd have the meeting.
Fine.
And still, it'd have to be very structured, though. It would still be maybe a sign-up sheet. Everybody has no more than 3 minutes. And then the way that we would respond, there would be, you have to think about it a little bit. Maybe no more than, as a board, maybe we try to limit it to we're not responding to every single one. Trying to think of, it'd be easy to say they're only going to speak for 3 minutes each and they have to sign up ahead of time. And then maybe we have a response for no more than 3 minutes as a collective board.
Dr. Ward, what's your thoughts on that? How long will it take us to, you know, or Amanda, how long will it take us to put this together? You know,
Yeah, and that would just be our typical notification. I think, yeah, I don't have any issue with giving it a try. I think you're going to get much more back in interaction around August
That's what I was going to say.
when it becomes relevant to people.
well, if we do the last one in July, because I mean, August, we're hitting the road on what, the 8th or 12th, 11th, 12th?
One more meeting in July.
And that's our next meeting, I believe.
That's the next
Yeah.
meeting.
What's that date again? I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me.
That is July 15th.
15th. See, we could possibly have another board meeting that last week in July. When's the first day of school is
August 13th.
August 12th. We could have a
We
meeting
have
of,
a school board meeting August 5th.
I will not be here for that meeting, but you know, you guys can
maybe the
still go.
last, I'm sorry, I interrupted.
No, you guys can still go, of course.
Well, I hate to take up a regular school board meeting because we're going to have a lot of stuff to cover.
I have a question on that. So you want it to cover the cell phone issues,
It would,
but most of the questions are going to be about implementation. That's not us.
I know, and I'm almost thinking that
well, the administration
might be
would have to be
better.
here.
For us to start the school, I'm just worried about the speculation. You know, what is gonna. We won't have a lot of proof yet as to what we're doing.
Good point.
I think it'll be difficult to field a lot of questions because it'll be a lot of speculation. It'll be a
Unknown
what
still.
happens if, and are you going to do this?
Yeah, you're right.
I think if we let the principals do their town halls, I'll even start the school year and go through those grade level meetings so that all the kids are aware of the expectations. And then touch base with the community at that point at the school board and say, hey, we've done this now for a couple weeks, we've done this for a month. Similar to what happened with the policy, once we pushed that out, we got some feedback. Maybe doing the same thing when our practices and procedures are in place, we open the door we solicit feedback at that.
So has there been a discussion by the administrators to have sort of a town hall meeting? I love that idea.
In July. You said 2 of them in July.
Looking at dates right now.
We would have something then a month or so after school starts.
A couple weeks into school would be a good time to touch base with the community.
I just think that communicates something very positive. Yeah. All right, let's look at that.
Whatever Dr. Boyd thinks, I mean, that's
I
fine.
mean, of course, this is your
I
decision,
understand.
but to me, that makes sense I'd be a little worried on the front end.
Yeah, because they're already doing it, so that's better for the administration.
I think give them a chance to roll it out. Let everyone feel it out for a few days, parents included, students included, and then let them come after they've gone through the process.
That's where all the questions are going to be.
That's where credible questions will be. I think they'll answer a lot of the questions that they have just going through the process. And then if they bring concerns to us at that point, then we can operate on them.
All right. I'm sorry, that was a side thing. It's just that it came up when we were talking about this.
Yeah.
Any more questions about this?
Yeah, I want to ask Mrs. Davis. You said, I think at one point you had wanted us to have board comment earlier, but now you're saying you don't? Mrs. Davis?
Say that again?
I think we've talked about this before in a board meeting, and I think you were at previously advocating to have a comment period earlier, but now you don't want that anymore?
No, I guess because I'm just irritated that you're the one that wanted to rush the work session, and now it's 10 o'clock at night and I'm tired and we already discussed this. That's part of my issue. But with that being said, yes, I would love to have, but we already discussed it in the work session.
I think what we were saying is, I believe what was decided is we would allow the superintendent to respond to that rather than one of us.
That's what we agreed upon, yes.
That's what we agreed upon. We had a big discussion about it.
Who was there?
And Ms. Davis was,
I'm with Mr. Rolls. I want to be able to have a public comment, but I agreed and he agreed and we all agreed that at least as long as somebody's responding to them, the ones that are coming and expressing their heart and stuff. So
I agree. I at least want to give the superintendent a chance, but maybe additionally.
well, let's see how this works, okay? Because I think a lot of it might be something that Dr. Boyd could respond to, because a lot of it could be simply, that's already been done, or we're doing that in the schools now. And just let's see how this works.
But and also, it's not, the policy doesn't say you can't have you can still comment.
You can't.
Yes, you can.
Explain that to me if it's not on the agenda.
I have asked to make a comment previously, and he allowed me to. One of our most recent meetings, I said something about the social media and how they were being bullies and stuff. He allowed me to make a comment before board comments.
I mean, maybe that works for us. I mean, strict Robert's rules would not allow you to do that.
Well, we don't have to go by Robert's rules. We just
Okay.
use it.
What about this right here, right now in
It's
front of us?
because our protocols do require Robert's rules.
Okay, you're right. I'm sorry.
So we're approving this. We're not approving it.
Well, I'm suggesting adding something which
I move
other
to
folks have supported in the past.
approve BDDC F1 KGS TSB as approved.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Now, further discussion? Mr. Rolls?
No, I just thought people had things to say about it, but if they don't, then that's that.
Other discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries unanimously. All right, next item. Okay,
Cell phone.
cell phone, yes, we have to make some changes. All right, Dr. Boyd.
So you do have before you again the policy that was passed by the school board, policy JFCK. I think we discussed in our smaller meetings that there was an issue with second to last paragraph, the statement that says all possession or use of portable communication devices. And I think in hearing some feedback from our community, the impression was that a student that had a cell phone in their backpack intended to use after school.
It was ambiguous.
It was ambiguous. So we scratched possession or, and now that section of the policy reads all use of portable communication device. I know we have some other things to discuss, but that's the one I know that agreed upon.
I think we did agree with that, but are there other things in this policy as long as it's here?
Yes, I think so. I in several places in here is confusing. I don't think it covers enough as far as people who are medically needed, medically have to have or have to use their phones. I think we should go back and work on that, not approve this policy tonight, but go back and work on it and add a few things to it. Yeah, we can.
About the emergency phone calls.
Yeah, the emergency phone calls and things like this, and but I think we can do much better than what we've got here.
We've already approved it. So do you have any, how do you want to communicate your specific recommendations? You're not ready to make any tonight?
No, I am not.
We had someone that made public comment that said it was confusing as well. So we probably should take a look at it and see what he thinks is. I didn't think it was confusing, but I knew the intent,
Oh, yeah, so this is our policy right now.
Correct.
If we don't do anything right now, it just we leave possession in there. That's what I'd like to clarify with the board.
Yes, and I think this is going to be a moving document, a moving target. We're going to be working on this probably for the next 6 months until we get it down. And I realize it is our policy right now, but I think it needs to make some changes made on it so we can approve the policy now if you want, and then bring some changes forward at the next meeting.
I hear what you're saying. I'm just thinking when it says shall be prohibited at each school to prevent disruption of the educational environment and to maintain order on school property during the instructional day. I think when there's a medical issue that the whole purpose of this is that we want to prevent disruption, but a medical issue is something that is not necessarily, it's a fact. It's not necessarily something that's disrupting the process of education. It's just something that I want to say it's more of a fact than it's intentionally disrupting. In other words, I think that what the intent of what this is saying is if these devices are intentionally disrupting any part of the educational process, we don't want it to happen. Well, a medical issue is not an intentional disruption of the educational process. But
We have the last sentence in there right now too. Flesh that out if we think we need.
yeah, students with medical needs, and that's there too.
Yeah.
I don't know. I hear what you're saying, and I do agree. We're going to have to probably continue to look at this. But I do think right now, the possession and use, in fact, we heard a parent talk about it today. It was very confusing, and I'd like to see us at least approve this, but
Right.
not say, I agree with you though, Mr. Frank, especially since we know how controversial this is going to be. There'll probably be ways in the future. I'm guessing that by October, we'll probably have to tweak this again.
Well, I just have a question for the board to clarify everyone's intent. Because I think it's a problem to cross out possession. It is confusing right now. I agree that it needs some updating. But if we cross out possession, we just say all use of portable communication devices are prohibited. I think Mr. Frank has said many times, that's what we have right now. And we're saying that's not good enough. Like that we're not good with them having them on their person, as they said, for the middle school. So just crossing out possession sort of makes this policy read like what we have currently rather than really being a real change. I think our intent was that.
Yeah, but did you hear all the things that happened earlier in the
And the
presentation?
emails too.
That, they don't want to take the phone, they're going to have it inside of a bag, but they're going to keep it. They're going to have possession of it, but they can't use it.
Yeah, I guess that's how you define possession. Like
But
you could change the words like you can just say not have free access. Is that a better term than possession?
I think use is, again, this is, I think, your call. I think possession is confusing. I think possession means that you cannot bring a cell phone. I don't think that's been the intent of what our discussions have been. Really, if it is, I think we have a whole different job ahead of us than we thought we had.
Not.
Yeah, so to me, the use of the cell phone is actually using it. The word possession there means that I walked into the building with a cell phone in my backpack, my purse.
Or in the yard, the school
Right.
yard.
And I think that's what, if you read the comments that were out there, it was that they were concerned with the fact that it said possession, thinking that their child could no longer come to school and have a cell phone. But even up above, it says that, after I think somewhere it mentions after the instructional day, you can make phone calls.
Yeah, the wording's
Some of
awkward.
those details. I don't know.
I think our intent is we don't want to have the students have access to the phone, don't have use or access to the phone during the instructional day. I mean, is that essentially what we're trying to say?
Yeah, that's,
Yeah, but possession, they're not going to be able to use it. They can have it with them, but they can't use it.
So yeah, I think just kind of the placing of the phrase during the instructional day is part at the end there. That's kind of what made it kind of awkward. So I do have a proposed rewording if you want to hear it.
well, that's some of the things that I was talking about a little earlier that we need to clarify is, what is the instructional day to you and I mean, to Dr. Boyd and I, it means something different than it does to maybe you. So what is the instructional day? And that's some of the changes that we're going to have to put into this at some point, and is that when we tweak it and fine tune it is, put a definition of the instructional day. And,
I would like to propose, this has been clearly misunderstood. I've had emails about it. We heard it tonight. And I think it would, even for our administrators, they even made mention, I think, of that they're glad to see, I may be mistaken, but that this change needs to be made. I agree with you that this is like we've already talked about. It's going to have to be tweaked. I'd like us to make this one change now and continue to look about how this might be tweaked. But let's not be so quick about trying to get everything settled and make it be perfect at this point. Let's go ahead and I would like to see to make this one change and continue to look at this, but let's get some more time. Even the administrators are continuing to tweak how they're going to do this. And they're probably going to come, I don't know, maybe next month they'll have another update. And so I'd like to wait before we start tweaking this anymore. But I do agree this is confusing. So I'd like to see us make that one change. Other thoughts?
Yeah, we're not going to be able to ask questions on why things aren't moving forward if we don't even have our policy approved yet. So we need to at least prove it tonight, and then we can continue to tweak it.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we approve policy JFCK with the one change that's in it.
Have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Davis. Further discussion?
Yeah, so I mean, you made the motion, obviously, Mr. Frank, but I think you've been mostly the one that's concerned about it not being good enough for us to just tell students that they can have their phones and just don't use them. You're not concerned that making this change communicates that. I mean, we think people pretty much know what we mean, even though we're not saying it clearly. That's my main concern.
Well, if we talk about possession and if we have possession there, it's like the Mr. Met said earlier today, that means they can't bring it to school at all. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for them to be able to bring their phone and then during the instructional day, put those phones away and not use them. So there's, that I think the use of portable communication is all we need there.
Any other discussion? Let's take a vote on this because there could be some discrepancy here. So we'll take an individual vote. Ms. Hoover, yay or nay?
Yay.
Mr. Rolls?
Yeah.
Yay.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries unanimously to make that one change. All right. We are near
Committee reports.
committee reports. We'll start with Mr. Frank this time.
Don't have any.
No,
Davis.
I'm good.
Mr. Rolls.
I'll just point out that we're talking about the underbags and we approve a fee schedule every year. So something we're probably going to want to consider next time we do that, or even motorcycle earlier.
Reports, not board.
Committee, thank you.
It's okay. Okay. Do you have a committee report, Mr. Rolls?
I do not.
Okay.
I have none.
And I do not. However, Dr. Boyd and I are going to the ATI meeting, which will be day after tomorrow, and I'll have a committee report on that next time. All right. Now, we have a superintendent's report. All right. Now we have a board report. We will start with Mr. Rolls.
Okay, so as I was saying about the fee schedule, I think it's reasonable for us to, if we have those ESSER funds to use, so not to buy some of those bags up front, but after that, I think having the affluent school is more of a privilege than a right. And so if anybody's going to try to like damage yonder bags to get at their phones, there should be a fee for that. It's like you break it, you buy it kind of a thing for the yonder bags.
Hoover, board comment?
Yes, I would like to thank Mr. Watson and his staff and Mr. Schaefer and his, all the middle school people who had a hand in taking a really good stab at how they're going to move forward with the cell phone. I know that it's not going to be an easy task, and I just want everybody to know that we appreciate your patience as we muddle through this together.
Frank?
I'd like to thank Mr. Davis for his invocation today, Mr. Metz for his comments, Mr. Garner for talking about the kids over at the high school there. I'd like to thank Mr. Watson and Mr. Schaefer for their presentations. Mr. Watson mentioned patience is what it's going to take. Unfortunately, that's not one of my virtues. So it's going to be. You know, I hope I didn't go down too hard on him. I wasn't. I didn't mean to be doing that. But I know it's going to be a long haul, and I think it's the best for our students to do this haul because I think this addiction is real, and we need to do whatever we can to stop that or help that. Thank you.
I just want to piggyback off of Kathy for Mr. Watson and Mr. Schaefer coming in. And I just want them to know that we are here for them. We're not against them, and we value them and we support them. I want to thank Pastor Davis for coming, something that helps me move forward. When I feel like the world is against me as a Christian, I just remember that the Bible does tell us that one day every knee will bow and every tongue will confess that He is Lord. And that is something that means a lot to me.
Thank you, everyone. First, I want to thank my fellow board members. I know sometimes we differ with our opinions, either out here in the open session or even in the closed session, but I appreciate each one of you and respect each one of you and all of your opinions. And I apologize sometimes that maybe my opinion comes a little too strong at times. And so forgive me for that, but I do respect each one of you. And I appreciate it, again, as has already been mentioned, all the work that Mr. Watson and the entire Mr. Schaefer and the entire middle school staff and the high school staff and Dr. Boyd and his staff for all the work they're doing with this cell phone. This is not easy. I think the only saving grace in all this is that pretty much every division in almost the entire state is going through the same thing, which does help a little bit because I know that superintendents get together and you can talk about, well, we're going to try this, we're going to try this. My guess is about a year from now, we're going to hear a whole lot more of what's working and what's not working in the various divisions in the state. But I am happy that we're really part of all this. And I do appreciate all the hard work that is being put into it. And we want to be as transparent as we can with the rest of the community. I did want to address a little bit with the apparent comment from Mr. Mr. Metz, is that I have done my best to contact every religious or worship organization in the entire county. And I have made phone calls pretty much, I believe, to everyone I have been able to find. And I have answers back from about 15, I think there's around 40 different religious communities that I had phone numbers for in the entire county. And whether they be Christian or whether they be Muslim or whether they be Jewish or even any other one, If they're in this county and I'm aware of them, I will contact them to come and lead an invocation. However, at this point, I do feel it's important to have a representation of the county. And so we're going to continue, and we have had discussions, even legal ones, about what's appropriate and what's not. And we're going to continue to have the invocation prayer, and I will do my best to make sure it is not centered on one area, and I will continue to make those phone calls. I do have the next couple of months of people coming, and it's being covered. Obviously, each one of us have our individual faith. Mine is also Christian, but I respect the other faiths. I don't believe in them, but I respect them very highly, and I don't ever want to think that people think that I don't. Oh, yes. And then also I did want to notice, thank you, Ms. Davis, is that when we begin the invocation, I am not asking anyone to stand. We just begin the invocation and the person gets up and he prays. And it's a choice as to whether someone would want to stand or not stand or even leave the room. That's their choice. All right. Thank you, everybody. I know it's late. We've been here for 3.5 hours. So thank you. Mrs. Ersky, Ms. Higgins, and Dr. Boyd, and also, I forgot your name in the back. Chester. Thank you very much for staying late. Jeff. What did I say, Chester? I thought Chester. Thank you, Jeff. All right. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Move we adjourn.
Do I have a second?
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. You're adjourned.